Very good morning to all of you. Welcome to the 15th Foundation Day lecture on the title Globalizing Indian Thought, Insights from Leadership Chronicles. First of all, we are welcoming our Chancellor, sir, to this program. Welcome, sir. Now I request our Vice Chancellor, Dr. L.S. Ganesh, to come on to the dais. Thanks, sir. I request today's chief guest, Professor Debashish Chatterjee, Director, IM Kozhikode, to come on to the dais. Welcome. Professor Debashish Chatterjee has taught leadership classes at Harvard University and at the Indian Institutes of Management, IIMs of Calcutta, Lucknow and Kozhikode for nearly 3 decades. The longest serving director of an IIM, he was reappointed to head IIM Kozhikode for a third 5-year term in 2023. Professor Chatterjee has been awarded the prestigious Fulbright Fellowship twice for pre-doctoral and post-doctoral work at Harvard University. A prolific author, he has published fiction and non-fiction, including Leading Consciously Krishna, The Seventh Sense, and Timeless Leadership, which have been translated into several national and international languages. His latest book, Leadership Chronicles, published by the Penguin Books, is a tribute to his pioneering efforts towards globalizing Indian thought. He has taught the art of practice of leadership to more than 1 lakh managers globally in Fortune 500 corporations and over 50,000 school leaders. Professor Chatterjee is credited with transforming IIM Kozhikode, a small town B school, into an institution of global recognition that is now counted among the top 3 IIMs in India and the top 70 management schools worldwide, according to the prestigious Financial Times rankings. Welcome you, sir. Now I request our Vice Chancellor, Dr. L.S. Ganesh, to give introductory remarks.
Namaste and a very good day ahead for all of you. Professor Chatterjee, Professor Rangarajan, Professor Vijayalakshmi and dear guests, we are indeed fortunate to have Professor Debashish here with us to share his thoughts on Indian thought and the idea of globalizing Indian thought. I wish to remind all of us that the national motto is Satyameva Jayate, which indeed comes from our own scriptures. It means a lot in terms of what we mean to the world. It means that truth and only truth will win, eventually. This eventually is very, very important because that brings us to the constant, perhaps, I wouldn't say eternal. Eternal may not be the right word, but close to eternal battle between adharma and dharma. Because eventually Satyam has to win. And we like to close our stories with Satyameva Jayate. I brought the idea of Satyameva Jayate simply because it carries a whole lot of meanings to the world at large. Because the highest ideals of good education is the answer to the question which only you can answer, not somebody else, because you are you and you are unique. Are you at peace with yourself? Because if you are at peace with yourself, you can attempt to be at peace with the rest of the world. The moment you lose your peace, many distortions happen in your lives. And given that ideal of Satyameva Jayate, I think there is a sufficient justification for globalizing Indian thought. Because the foundations of Indian thought are on the motto of Satyameva Jayate. I'm sure you're going to listen to a lot of wisdom, perhaps uncommon, which you would not have been exposed to earlier. And given the fact that Professor Debashish is a fantastic speaker, I'm sure this day would have been very well spent by you. And I'm a firm believer, and I've shared this openly, and I've always pleaded with everybody that we must respect outside the class learning as much as we respect inside the class learning. Because there are so many lessons you learn outside the class, which perhaps are less structured than what you would learn inside a class. But I believe you have to learn to blend the two. And here you have a golden opportunity to learn, if I may use the term, quasi-class learning. Because you have a lecture, a foundation day lecture, which is in part like a class and in parts not like a class. But I'm sure your own minds will place this more outside the class than inside the class because of the manner in which Professor Debashish always shares his wisdom. Sir, we are indeed honored to have you here with us today, and I'm sure you're going to share a lot of your wisdom, and the value that people will derive here is going to be tremendous. So we look forward to your talk today and our Foundation Day lecture, the 15th, arranged by our branding team, Dr. Sudhakar and his colleagues. Thank you very much, sir. We have a fantastic audience here. I must share with you, young students. We have with us, very distinctively speaking, we have with us Professor M.R. Rao, the earlier director of IIM Bangalore and the first dean of Indian School of Business at Hyderabad, one of the finest researchers in management, at least among all Indians, I would say he's probably taking the flag and running ahead. And then we have Professor B.J. Rao, a remarkable intellectual, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Hyderabad. And then we have with us Professor J.M.R., who was our immediate previous Vice Chancellor, from whom I have taken over as the Vice Chancellor. So I must welcome all of them. We have with us Mrs. Sobarani Yashaswi, who is the chairperson of our foundation. And we have Professor Haragopal Reddy, one of our advisors, the former Vice Chancellor of Nagarjuna University. And we have Sri T.P. Das, the former Director General of Police and IPS Officer of Distinction, and several other senior colleagues. We also have one of the leaders of the Krishnamurti Foundation, Mr. Venkat Alluri. I hope I've spelled it correctly. Vishwanath Alluri. Yeah, I'm sorry. Somebody got your name, this thing wrong. I got your name itself differently. I'm sorry, sir. Please, Mr. Vishwanath Alluri. Welcome here, sir. Yeah, he is the head of the J. Krishnamurti Foundation in India. Okay, so I hope we can begin with Professor Debashish's thing. Yeah. Talk. Yeah.
Esteemed Chancellor Dr. C. Rangarajan, distinguished faculty, board members, students, alumni, and the esteemed guests. I would, when I see a roll call of names here were present, it seems very intimidating because I come from a small village called Kundamangalam in Kerala, and I saw the cast of characters who were in the Foundation Day lectures before me, and I feel not just humbled but intimidated because I don't think I have either the erudition or the experience or the enormity of intellectual prowess that these people bring to you, but I will try my best to live up to your patience for an hour or so that you're going to be here. Am I audible? Am I clearly audible at the end? So Dr. Rangarajan, apart from him, there is Dr. L.S. Ganesh, Madam Shobharani SSC, Sri V.R. Shankara, Professor B.J. Rao, Professor M.R. Rao, Professor Mahendra Reddy, Professor Uday Desai, who I don't see here, Sri T.P. Das, Sri Vishwanath Alluri, Professor Hargopal Reddy, Professor Suresh Chand Sharma. Celebrating 15th Foundation Day of ICFAI is celebrating a beacon of academic excellence rooted in innovation in higher education. Foundation Days are moments of reflection, looking back as well as looking forward. Well, I can't look back because I haven't built this institution. I can only look forward and say that the mirrors of broader transformation that we see in India today is reflected in a handful of institutions. This is one of them, because it has had the ability to blend tradition with modernity, local values with global aspiration. ICFAI actually brings a global perspective in Indian institution. It has actually tried setting up campuses outside long before we were thinking of globalizing Indian thought, not always successfully. However, the very fact that you tried, made an attempt to reach out, shows that it is something worth pursuing. It connects and it resonates deeply with the vision of IIM Kozhikode, which is globalizing Indian thought. Now, we have reached a defining moment in human history when the debate is between MI or AI. Now, the question is, we do not know much about either of these. We can speculate. My submission is, AI is neither artificial nor is it intelligence. It might rattle some of you who are invested in that subject. When I think of artificial intelligence, I wonder what was the source of this. Generative AI has come in its own reckoning, but who generates? That's my question. And why is it not artificial? Because it's an outsourced version of natural intelligence. It is natural intelligence that has found a way of a secretarial job, a highly productive secretary who can do a lot more than you can imagine to the human carbon brain. So the carbon brain has outsourced some of its activity to the silicon brain, and the silicon brain has become a law unto itself. Not that we understand it fully, but the little we understand it tells me that either it is artificial intelligence. First of all, I said it is not artificial, it is natural, outsourced. And then it is not intelligence either. Why? Because intelligence is the ability, according to Marvin Minsky, the father of artificial intelligence is the ability to see a phenomena from multiple angles, as many different ways, not just algorithmically, sometimes altruistically. And so you have to understand that when a rat is being chased by a cat will find its own way for survival, not based on an algorithm, because it has a life skill that is given to it that cannot quite be mapped fully. So as far as we don't understand this, one thing I understand from the Indian perspective, from the Indian thought perspective, is that neither artificial intelligence nor natural stupidity can access that core of our existence that starts with I am. I am. This is my existential reality. I don't think any device so far has been able to replicate this existential reality. A computer is not going to ask this question, I am, because I am is something that is truly existential. It cannot be programmed. It cannot be accessed by the senses. It cannot be broken down into cause-effect relationships. And I'll tell you why. And this is something that is also an existential issue that needs a new narrative. So our education is rooted in this whole journey of who's this individual that is pursuing this learning and for what purpose. And now it needs a new narrative, and this new narrative has a history, 5,000 years old. 2,000 years back, we had this institution called Takshashila, and there were students from China and Greece who came to visit Takshashila. Why did they come here? What was the quest? Was Takshashila doing great technological work? These universities were based on the philosophical and religious traditions. Huan Sang came to Nalanda and he wrote his chronicle. He was a Chinese scholar who wrote about his journey to India, and he described this chronicle as a journey to the West. For all practical purposes, India was the West of China and the space of enlightenment. What did they come to India for? And therefore, we have to begin our inquiry into why contemporary India, where we are moving from consumption to innovation, becomes even more relevant than ancient India was. My argument is not rooted in fancy or misplaced nationalism, because I think patriotism precedes nationalism, and if you're a true patriot, you will cease to be a nationalist. You will look at the world, larger world as your own. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is an expression of that. So India understands that the only way to look at the economy of innovation is to look at this humongous population that you have, convert this enormous human population, 1.4 billion, into human capital. How do you convert population into capital? Because you have to respect the population's ways of doing their learning. So if you see a washing machine churning lassi in the summer in Punjab, and therefore jacking up the sales of washing machine, you must not think of this as an aberration. You may think of this as a way of India begins to use resources. You know, I went to United States of America, I asked a question, my first visit to America on a Rotary International Fellowship, I asked a question to an all-American audience, what does half-boiled egg mean to you, half-boiled egg? The answer was, an egg boiled for half the time. I said, in my little town in West Bengal, my mother used to cut an egg into two halves with a thread so that two brothers could have equal portion. Without generating sibling rivalry, she has to cut it into equal halves. That's what half-boiled eggs meant for India. And now you can see the ability to see value in deficiency, to see value in inadequacies, to be able to generate value out of that. In Calcutta, in my growing up years, the roads were like, you cannot imagine how bad the roads were. So whereas in civilized cities, you drove either on the right or the left, in Calcutta you drove on whatever was left. And that also bred the ingenious way of navigating a road. Now you may say that it doesn't do good service to a country where roads are so bad. I mean, roads may have gotten better, but how about driving skills? Right? So you can see the skills that grow out of inadequacies, skills that have to be accounted for. They are not learned at universities. You have a plethora of skills available. First of all, you discover them rather than develop skills. We are in the whole developmental brigade. No, we want developing skills. But why don't you discover some of the skills which are already there, developed over years, and why don't you bring them to the fore of conventional thinking? And this has never happened. It never occurs to us. We have begged for technology, we have begged for food, we have begged for every damn thing that you can imagine. And now we are begging for ideas, which is the saddest part. A country of 5,000 years of vintage is begging for ideas. So India is at the cusp of another revolution. The first revolution was the revolution of the machine. Industrial civilization was built on the machine revolution. And that was led by Europe. You know, all the colonizers of ours led that revolution. America led the digital revolution. But there's another revolution in the offing, which can best be described as the cognitive revolution. The revolution of knowing how to use your God-given brain in ways that could not have been taught in universities and schools. Now, how about that kind of a revolution? I think we are at the cusp of that, and that's what makes India so enormously special. And leading this cognitive revolution, you see, Indians are sitting on high tables across the world today. You look at Microsoft, Google, Adobe, World Bank, IBM. Look at the last two deans of Harvard Business School. Look at the current dean of Oxford Science School of Business. They all had their degrees in Indian institutions before they migrated. So the point I'm trying to make is this, that this institution has got a net exporter of leadership talent, and it is natural. We have 1.5 billion people. You just look at the sample size. You're bound to throw up exceptional people. But that's not the point. The point is that why is it that we have an exceptional talent pool right at the top? One Buddha and so many Buddhas. One Gandhi and then there's an Andhi there. Is it possible to look at those exceptional creatures of human civilization and see what made them exceptional? Instead of standardizing everything to a monolith, can we look at those exceptions and say, what was this exceptional thing all about? Then you will chance upon something that makes education a very, very important thing, because education is not necessarily, is education of the head. There are different elements of education which are very important. So if I look at what the world can learn from India, the world can learn scale, how to operate on scale and scope. 600 million young people trying to get some kind of education. In IIM Kozhikode, we get 300,000 applications. The acceptance ratio is 1:700 in our main flagship program. Now, have you wondered where this 699 students will go? I was talking to a bunch of Europeans who had come to Delhi for, they've set up shop everywhere in India. And they were saying that, enormous Indian potential. I said, but what is the driving force that go to your schools in America, Australia? Not out of aspiration, but out of desperation. They have to catch up with their peer group. Somebody's got into IIT, got into IIM, so I have to go. So expensively earned foreign degree is better than, so you can see the enormity of the potential here. And we can easily have 100 IIM-like institutions, yet not fill up the demand thing. So I was just giving them a sense of the scale. I said, these 600 million people would be more, that looking for a degree or a diploma, will be more than the population of United States of America, Australia, UK, France, Germany, Canada put together. More than your population. So you can think of the scale. Now, the scale is not enough. So what will they come to? What will India present to the world? They'll present to the world that wealth is very important, but wisdom has to accompany wealth. Otherwise, wealth will not make any sense. Is it possible that you have thought of Alexander coming to India in search of enormous wealth, and he went back with wisdom, and he said, when I die, this is Alexander's wonderful, if you read his biography, he said, when I die, allow my two hands to be visible outside the coffin and they should be empty, just to tell people that you can't take away anything from here. This was his vision. And if I look at that extraordinary nature of what this wisdom means, it means you're the trustee of this wealth, called knowledge. And if you do not know how to give away this knowledge in time, you will go empty-handed anyway. You're not going to take even this knowledge out beyond you. So what is the best way to do it is to not exclusive fortresses of intellect like IITs, IIMs alone, but inclusive institutions which know how to cater to people who wouldn't be able to make it there, those 699. What are we doing about them? This is a very important question that IIM Kozhikode asked. And we were the first IIM to go. In 2001, we went digital. We reached out. Instead of people coming to IIM began to go there. Because sometimes to reach Delhi for attending a board meeting, I had to take a flight through Dubai. Such was our flight conditions, right? So I decided that it's possible that we can scale up our original idea. 2001, Professor Kalro from IIM Ahmedabad started the first digital footprints of IIM Kozhikode, and we scaled up to a point where our revenues of 100 crores come only from this program. The demand is so high. The real growth story is 6 years of work experience and digital. So you want to visit this extraordinary campus 3 times a year, but what you really gain is based on your work X. We started a practice track PhD. People who are actually working somewhere, very important roles to play, and they can't afford 5 years away from their work. They can do a PhD while they are at work. And we confer a PhD on problems they're solving and the rigor is not diminished in the process. In fact, we gain a lot from their experience. So the one aspect of Indian thought is that how will Indian thought be globalized? Our philosophy is extraordinary. But the English language is the vehicle through which, in 1498 when Vasco da Gama came to India, there was a chance that Portuguese would colonize India. In that case, I would be speaking to in Portuguese, not in English, right? Luckily, Vasco da Gama didn't have his way. And so the point is, English language becomes a very important issue, and so is philosophy. Now, there is a significant disdain for philosophy. The moment you use the word philosophy, in the managerial world, you are foo-fooed. But is there anything called leadership without a philosophy? When I earned my PhD from a modest place and I went to my village where nobody had gone to college, I was a celebrity of sorts. So an old man comes and tells me, so what is it that you do? I said, I'm a doctor. I've just become a doctor of philosophy. He says, what kind of disease is philosophy? I've heard of many kinds of disease. No, you had no answer to that question, but you know that essentially without that, you cannot really, if you do not have a philosophical orientation to life, and philosophy doesn't mean that you have to have, everybody will end up being a Shankara or a Buddha, but philosophy means a way of looking at life, a perspective that becomes very critical. So is it possible that you look at India has its own way of using the English language? We speak more English than Englishmen do. The problem is we speak English all right, but our English is very contextualized. So I'm in Calcutta, this driver, like the driver who brought me here today, was driving at breakneck speed, breaking all traffic rules. So I asked him, sir, what is it that you're doing? He says, sir, I'm a racist. You're a racist? Oh, I like to race cars, but I'm not getting this opportunity in Calcutta. And then after a while, he turns towards me and says, sir, what is your profession? I said, just like you drive cars, I'm expected to drive faculty, so I'm a fascist. He says, who's the person sitting next to you? I said, he's my faculty, he gives marks and remarks. He's a Marxist, if you allow me. So the thing is this, that we know how to classify in our own way. So language is a superimposition on reality. We are still thinking like a Bengali or a Kannadiga or, another person, but we have to express this in English language. The nuances of the language have grown only richer because it is interacted with Indian reality. So think of English language as very critical, and I think it is very important that we have to understand that while we are looking at expressions of our knowledge, language capability is a very immense capability. And it actually, with the large language models coming up, it might be democratized a little bit more. Maybe Harvard case studies will be available in Maithili. Who knows? But until then, English language, the Anglo-Saxon world will dominate the world scene, and it will be another 20 years or so before other languages take over. So this is something to remember. Another aspect of globalizing Indian thought is global benchmarks in research excellence. Now, I'm sorry to say that algorithms are taking over. I was interviewing an IIM Ahmedabad PhD for employment in our institution. He has done his PhD on analytics and HR. AI, analytics, and HR. So I said, so what is artificial about artificial intelligence? Just a simple question. And he went round and round because he's working on it. He come to a specific understanding. So there is no curiosity beyond what the books are telling you. Because there's so much of algorithmic work that's already available for you to download, you're losing out the basic structure of what research is. Research starts with curiosity. So you must orchestrate curiosity in the processes, but where is that happening? That's not happening. So the quality of our PhDs, the quality of our research is not reaching world-class proportions. Why is that so? Because the fundamental flaw here is fundamental flaw. NEP is trying to correct some of that, but we should have done it long back. I don't think Indian education was silo-based, ever. Now that we are trying to liberate as though it's a newfound, it's not newfound. It was always our interdisciplinary nature of our discourses, all our knowledge traditions talk to each other. Ayurveda talked to astronomy, astronomy talked to geometry, geometry talked to physics, and so it was essentially seamless knowledge creation. And so is it possible that you look at our rishis, the Indian rishis, they had this basic thing called curiosity. They were researchers. And they said, I'm not going to be defeated by correlationship. What is correlationship? I want to fly, the birds fly. And I have seen birds fly because they have wings and feathers. So I have put wings and feathers and I've jumped from a cathedral, assuming I will fly, and I fall with a thud in the mud and I kill myself. There are people who died trying to fly like that. Until Bernoulli gave us the Bernoulli's theorem, and he said, airlift is what makes you fly. So there was a causal force at work, not correlationship, causality. The rishis were looking for causality. And they said, wherever there is smoke, there must be fire. So wherever there's an effect, please find out the cause. This was a bit of a correlationship, but then when they went deeper, they asked the next question. What is the root cause that produces million effects? And they said, look at a seed, it produces a whole forest, but you can trace the forest to the seed. So look for the root cause. The Japanese perfected this in some way and did what they did. Then they said there's a third law of causation. When the actual cause, root cause is taken away, nothing of the effect will remain. When you take away the ocean, the waves don't exist anymore. Because the wave is a modified ocean. So ocean is causal. Then they came to another level of causality. They said there comes a time when cause and effect cannot be distinguished anymore with the senses. They have become one for all practical purposes. And they call this Ishvara. Ishvara doesn't mean an otherworldly creature. It means where cause and effect has become one. Ish means king and Vara means nature. Ishvara means the one who rules nature. And the ruler is in the laws of the rules. So if you park your new car under a jackfruit tree, the jackfruit tree, if it is ripe enough, will fall on your car, will make a dent because of the force of gravity. You can't say this is the president's car. How can it happen? It's the causal force at work. And so Ishvara is at work. And they said, for lack of a better word, let's call it Ishvara, the ruler of nature. This is the research of the rishis. Have we discovered anything more deep, more profound than this yet? With all the algorithms that we have? This is a question I'm leaving with you because this is an answer that I haven't found, but I have found the question. And the question is it possible that we move therefore for the method of acquiring this Ishvara nature? And they said, Ishvara is all of you. It is not something that is, you can be that causal force that can produce any effect that it wants. It sounds a little bit of mysterious and magical, but it isn't so. He said there's a method to go there. And there are leaders like Gandhi who actually exemplified. If you read, I spent some time in Ahmedabad and I went through My Experiments with Truth again, his autobiography. And he says in one place, there comes a time in a human being's life when his thoughts become things. And before that he says, you must know how to reduce yourself to zero in order to understand what is Ishvara, notion of Ishvara. This is Gandhi. And he never said, I have arrived at the truth. These are my experiments with truth. And the result of his experiment was that you move from egology to ecology, ecosystem, eco-orientation to life. So your ego is what comes in the way. Narayan Murthy was speaking to, I was sharing a board meeting with him, and he was saying Al-Biruni in the 11th century, the century maybe he may have got misplaced it by 100 years here and there. But he said, I found Indians to be very arrogant. This is Al-Biruni's description of Indians, very arrogant about their knowledge. And that arrogance is what destroyed us. Arrogance is what destroyed. The Lodhis had all the elephants. The arrogance that elephants could win the war allowed Babur to come from Central Asia on a horseback and completely destroy the Lodhis. And the Mughal arrogance allowed the British to come with their gunpowder and destroy them. So as power got subtler and subtler, our arrogance came our way. And this is how we were colonized. This is the exact antithesis of what India was suggesting that it should be. So if you replace ecology with ecosystems, then you will know that the very basis of our education that says, who am I, without the summation of contribution from my ecosystem. So if I dissect myself, my jacket gets stitched in Delhi, my shirt comes from China, my glasses get crafted in Mumbai, the software I'll call my brain is an accumulated gift of my students, my parents, my peers. If I take away all of these, even my vocal cords will not be mine, so I will be saying something like, I'll be functionally rendered zero. This is what Gandhi was referring to. If you know how to convert yourself to a zero, you begin to sense that you are just an appearance in your ecosystem. The ahamkar, akar goes, the aham goes with it. And the moment you see the aham And he did not say aham will ever go away from you. It simply says you have to ripen your understanding of the aham. So you say, for instance, you say, I want to make an impact in the world, globalize Indian thought. And, oh, that's a good expression of your ahamkar, as though you could do it yourself. But anyway, good. I have written a book and I don't want to sell the book because it's against my professorial, dignity. That ahamkar, you can get rid of. To look at the bigger ahamkar. The point is that it's a play, it's a game that nature is playing with us to figure out at what level of evolution we are in. And if I look at these great leaders of India, I see that they have actually understood this game so well. And so look at a Buddha, look at a Gandhi, look at a Teresa, look at every individual that left their mark in the world. You see the same theme coming up again and again. So who am I without the summation of contribution from others? And it is possible that we get to see this even in our day-to-day thing. There was this Saurav Ganguly, Indian cricket captain. He said, I was batting with Virendra Sehwag. This is for the young guys who are almost going out to sleep because listening to Buddha doesn't wake you up. So talking about Saurav Ganguly. Now Ganguly is batting with Virendra Sehwag and India has got to score 300 plus runs to defeat England. Virendra Sehwag in his usual flamboyant fashion says, Dada, we will win it. Ganguly says, I'm not that sure, bat cautiously. Sehwag is taking strike, first ball he hits for a 4. Ganguly taps the bat and says, now take a single, you've already got a 4. He says, okay, and then he hits the next one for a 6. And Dada says, I walk up to him and said, now that you've got 10 runs, 1 would be fine. Single would be fine. He doesn't look at Ganguly, hits the next ball for a 4 again. And the 4th one, and 5 boundaries later, he takes a single and they're crossing their... He looks at Saurav Ganguly and says, Dada, you told me to take a single, I've taken it. You know what Saurav Ganguly had to say? He said, I learned something that day. I learned that there's a Saurav Ganguly way of winning the match, there's a Virendra Sehwag way of winning the match, there's a Rahul Dravid way of winning a match. So as a leader, you must accommodate these differentials. So leadership is the leadership. Leaders don't take sides, they bring sides together. It is fundamental to ecosystem, eco-sensitivity. So when I look at 107 faculty that are marching around in my campus, each of them is a leader in their own right. Now, I must not disturb their way of looking at the world. I may nudge them here and there, but if I go and advise them top down, they are simply going to not listen to me, right? So I started something what you might call the coaching model of leadership, and teachers are expected to do the same with students. You nudge them. You don't tell them what to do. You nudge them around what could be done if they could consider this. That's a way of teaching learning that really helps. I'm going to take 2 more. I have 5 more minutes. Yes? 5-10 minutes. You give me 15 minutes here. Oh, that's a lot of time. People will go to sleep. Nevertheless, let's look at power and authority. Now, we might think synonymously, authority is authorized power. Now, I would not assume that power will come from authority alone. Authority is one of the sources of power. But most of us in the Indian context, look at a little person who has got a worthy little, uniform, immediately acquires authority. It has to be given, he'll just talk down to you. He'll, just give him a little. So authority seems to be the equal to power. And Indian thought, and this is where Indian thought has made this distinction very clear. They said that authority will come from outside. It is an accessory. So the king will have an authority given within his kingdom. Swadese pujvate raja vidyan sarvatra pujvate. This is my grandmother used to tell me. Which means king has territorial authority. But the real power will not come from territory. It will come from the conduct of the king, the integrity of the king. The power that he exudes by virtue of who he is, not what has been given to him. Now, this king and the sage had to converse with each other. The Indian model of leadership was always Rajarshi. Raja has to work with Rishi. And what is the Rishi? Rishi is the software. Raja is the hardware. Without a Krishna, there is no Arjun. Contrarily, without an Arjun, Krishna is ineffective. Without an Aristotle, there is an Alexander. Without Chanakya, there is no Chandragupta. Without ICFAI, there is no you here, sitting here. You understand what I'm saying? And it is possible that you look at power as that which comes from inside out. What is the greatest power? Very often we mistake power as force. Force is not something. When Hitler and Gandhi meet, Gandhi's asked this question, so what would happen if Hitler took you on? He said, I will be killed, but my ideal will surpass his by years. So ideas will not be killed. The point is that when you confuse power with force, you don't see the distinction. Power is something that comes from the deepest values that you heard at the beginning of this talk. Satyam. The three values of I am Kozhikode are Satyam, Nityam and Purnam. Satyam is authenticity, Nityam is sustainability, Purnam is fulfillment. Now power comes from there. If you do diligent hard work, you begin to be recognized. Recognition brings you influence, and influence brings you power. This is a subtle process of gradation, how power is acquired. The rishis knew it. They said you acquire power by just being self-aware, become aware of the trajectory of power, how power comes to you. And this is very important then. You have to make a distinction between role and the self. The role is what is given to you, the self is what you are, what your being is. So if you're wearing a shirt there, it's not a shirt that you're wearing. If I cut that shirt and make it into a handkerchief, it will be called a handkerchief. If I use it as a mop, it will be a mop. That's your role. But the real self is the fabric that is being now Nama, Rupa and Arthakya Karita, name, form and utility is what is creating this transactional world of roles. So here you are as an individual, here is a role, here is the organization. Your life is an interplay of these three, but the fundamental to this is the individual self from where the role acquires meaning. When the world acquires its power, its gravitas. And it is possible then that I come to the issue of understanding what is this multiple roles that an institution like yours need to play. I have given my faculty 3 hills to climb. I said there are 3 hills to climb. One is called Research Hill. So if you publish a 50-50 article, I'm going to give you a reward, which will be some financial reward, but I also going to ring a bell 12 times in your honor. We have a bell, 400 kgs bell in I am Kozhikode. And when people ask me, in addition to money, what do they get? I said, they ghanta milta hai. Ghanta is bell, right? And so that bell is much more powerful than the 25 lakhs they get for 50-50. Of course, money is useful. Nobody says it's useless. But the ghanta is very important, that it rings a bell, that you've now come to this space. It is possible that you look at the multiple roles that you play. The 3 hills, one is research, one is teaching, the other is consulting, admin. Now, you can't be great in everything. You climb one hill to the highest point possible. The other 2 hillocks you can climb, but if you're too bad, we will nudge you around that. So an institution is built on multiple contribution from, it's not just a cookie cutter method of converting everybody into a perish or publish world. This is what IIMs have led into that trap, because we have global accrediting agencies that are now quickly creating benchmarks that have nothing to do with you. They're asking me that, you don't have international students enough. I said, so what is your definition of an international student? Oh, somebody who was born in Germany, educated in Paris, and works in Belgium. I said, somebody who's born in Kashmir, educated in Mumbai, works in Delhi, is not international? Just because you fragmented one continent into little come So if you're into passport counting, I will not be international. But if you look at number of cultures, costumes, cuisines that come as a confluence in India, we are an international. And Indian students know much more about America than American students know about India. That much I can tell you. So what makes us more international? That is what it is, our perspective, our worldview, the way you crisscross cultural barriers. Then we come to the last frontier, which is Indian education. Looked at Hridaya Vritti as complementary to Buddhi Vritti. They are very important issues. Buddhi Vritti is culture of the intellect. Hridaya Vritti is culture of the heart. And both are equally important in making a person a whole person. Unfortunately, Buddhi Vritti does not generate enough value for either vritti to come in, I'm going to ask you to consider two examples here. I'm going to end with this. One was B.K.S. Iyengar, from whom I learned the light of yoga. He lived up to 80. Iyengar yoga was all over the world. He had both, and he had this buddhi vritti, sharp mind. So he was training in Belgium, and the Queen of Belgium or the King of Belgium invited him, and he had students who were smoking before his yoga class. And he said, what do I do with smokers in my class? So I have to dissuade them from smoking, but if I tell them, they will not listen. So he called one of them and said, you know what kind of smoker you are? You can't even smoke properly. He said, what do you mean? He said, I will teach you to be a better smoker. Your lung capacity has to grow. For that you need yoga. Right? This is how and I visited him in his ashram in Pune. And I told him, you wrote Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. I want to know about siddhis. I'm a management guy. I only want results, miraculous results if possible. He said, I don't want to talk about siddhis. I said, which means two things. Either you don't know what siddhi is, or you don't want to tell me. Which of this is true? Then he got angry with me. He said, you know, at my age, which is 95, I can do a headstand. I was born with a congenital problem. I couldn't go to school, but my teaching is done in Harvard. My stuff is taught in Harvard, in China, 130 odd countries. I said, I want to know what is it that you do in teaching yoga. So he said, you watch me. So he was actually training a bunch of Europeans, and he was asking this lady to stretch her hands to an angle she couldn't. She was struggling. Our buddhi vritti will tell us, put more effort, right? What was Iyengar saying? Iyengar saying, put more love into the gesture. Put more love. Not effort, love. Love is what makes effort effortless. Put more love. This was important. I'm going to end this with a little experience from Japan. Japan is, I think, derivative of India. All the great philosophies of India are actually practiced there. So I go to this sushi restaurant. It's a classical sushi restaurant. And you get the most expensive sushi. Is supposed to be the best, but most expensive. So I thought, most expensive, how much can that be? So I ventured with an Indian flag on my jacket, and I went there, and it was so expensive that I felt like coming out. But India's prestige was at stake. So I said, okay, I will order a meal. I ordered. The first thing that I got was seaweeds, which I don't eat. Then I got an octopus, which I don't eat. I got 4 in a row, which I don't eat. And then I had some stuff that I ate, because I'm a Bengali. I have a sort of seafood is my kind of thing. So I could enjoy 4 out of the 10 in a 10-course menu. And then the bill came. My heart is beating very fast. I'm wondering, why should I cough up so much money for? And the bill was 1/8 of what was written on the menu card. So I asked this lady who had served me the bill, why is it 1/8 of the menu? He said, I was watching you. I only charged you for food you enjoyed, not the food you ate. Would you go back to this? Is karma yoga. Your karma as a provider of food is added to the yoga, is addition to the recipient of your value. This is not expertise, this is flexpertise. This is expertise flexible enough to connect to the receiver of the value. The world is moving, not expertise is going to be taken over by algorithms, but flexpertise cannot be. I'll give you 2 examples of this, and then I will leave. You are in Kerala, and you see a teacher teaching students, and one student is struggling to draw the national flag. She says, what is your problem? I can't remember whether green is at the top or saffron is at the top. He says, you're from Kerala. People give you sambar rice. Your mother gives you sambar rice. Yeah. On a banana leaf. No? Yeah. And what is the color of banana leaf at the bottom? Green. Rice, white. Sambar, saffron. Can you now remember the frequency of colors? That no algorithm will give you. You go to a railway station in Gujarat, this guy is polishing your shoes and carrying an English edition of Times of India. Dipal Gala is not here, should be happy to hear Times of India, right? So, and you ask, Arey bhai, do you know how to read English? No, sir. Why are you carrying Times of English edition? The guy whose shoes I'm polishing gets bored, so I give him that paper. I get a good tip for it. This is flexpertise. Singapore's finance minister, currently the president of Singapore, I am in Singapore and he's announcing the budget. He says, as a result of my budget, Mrs. Lee, who used to buy 150 kgs of rice from Orchard Road, will now be able to afford 200 kgs, and she can afford a taxi instead of a public transportation because of my budget. Mrs. Lee understands that budget. This is flexpertise. This is yoga in action. And I hope that this extraordinary group that I'm sitting here with, this has been an afternoon worth being here, if only for the quality of the attendance, the people I have been able to see right in front of me, and those who haven't heard me but will hear about it later on. I bow down deep in gratitude and with simple sense of feeling good that I was able to share notes with so many of you this hour. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for that inspiring and valuable speech that you have delivered today. Thank you so much. Now, I request from the audience or faculty, or those who attend online also, any questions are there? Sir is ready to take a few questions. Yes, sir. One.
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, I'll go up there to respond to your question. Yeah, go ahead, please. Yes.
Sir, hearty congratulations. It was an excellent lecture. It will take a lot more time for me to fully digest what you have said. So I have a simple practical question. How can Indian business, you see, by making use of the Indian thought to become globally competitive? Our objective is to make Indian business globally competitive. Now, how does this thought process, which I have spelled in detail, we can become globally competitive? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you've heard that every computer has an Intel chip in it. But do you see that there's an Indian behind every Intel chip? We are already globally competitive. Let me answer your question slowly. You're already globally competitive. This is the invisible India that is making us competitive. The visible India is not shown up because we don't see a single product, Indian product. If you go to the supermarket, it's in Japan, in Tokyo, Kyoto. You go to New York, LA. You go to Milan in Italy. You don't see a single Indian product that you can call truly Indian. Because we have learned to be invisible for a long time. The colonizers have made sure that you will not be visible in language, in your originality, in your dress, and every which way. If you go to RBI, Reserve Bank of India, you see something interesting. Before 1950s, most RBI governors and officials were wearing Indian attire. After that, we started copying and imitating. Now, the syndrome is pervasive. It is not just in intellectual life. So unless I get certified by a world body, my research is not validated. Unless I'm a Vivekananda, unless I go to Chicago, I will not be received in Calcutta or Chennai. Now, this has been going on for 200 years. It's not a new phenomena. Now, on my own steam, if I'm able to produce something, I'm already producing it. I went to Yale University, my son graduated from there. And I was surprised to see the Yale started with a donation from a carpet maker in Chennai. Nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about it. So invisible India is already global. There's no other country more global than us if you look at the invisible dimension of India. But the visible part of it, branding, brand India, we haven't been able to get there. So Hotmail will sell out very quickly. Vatia can't hold on and make Hotmail. So Hotmail will sell out to somebody. We had this great drink called Limca. So Chauhan had to sell off Limca to a big player. So we go to the threshold of what you call a deputy magistrate, called deputy magistrate. I can't be a magistrate because deputy magistrate is my glass ceiling. That's the colonized mind. And that mind has yielded space to lot of civilizations, lot of thought processes. that do not serve us well. Look at the QSQT syndrome, quarter se quarter tak. Narayan Murthy said, quarter se quarter tak. Now you're evaluating a company based on quarterly reporting, which simply means that you can't survive 3 quarters, you're out as a CEO. So what would be your goal there? To somehow maximize returns within this quarter? And even if it means destroying the company, look at Satyam, look at Renran, look at Anderson Consulting, look at where they've gone. If you look at Indian thought, we are starting an organization for perpetuity. This is the characteristic feature of Indian institutions. You can sell off a church in America. You can't sell it off a temple in India. I have seen a church being converted into a mosque and then a temple. The Gujaratis were clever enough to buy off that property and make it into a temple. So everything is on sale. So there is a price for everything. Would you like to emulate that to be in the global space? India is already there. India is invisibly there. But in order to make this invisible visible, we have to come together. Our ecosystem has to come together and say, okay, this is Indian origin. And we must know how to present that to the world. We don't know. Our problem is finishing skills. You go to any Indian embassy, High Commission office, rats moving here and there. Where 300 people can sit, you will invite 500 people, they don't know where to sit. So our finishing skills are abysmal. That's the reason why we don't make those impressions that we should be making. I think we have to start looking at brand India very differently. Brand India very differently. When I was a Fulbright scholar in the Kennedy School, one of the very well-known professors, whose name I don't want to mention, he says, we should stay and do my work. I'll give you a table at Harvard. You'll acquire a PhD here and you will do the consulting work I'm doing. This will make you very rich very quickly. This was one advice. The other advice came from Charles Handy, whose name I want to mention. He was one of the founding professors of London Business School. He said, Devashish, go back to India, don't stay here. Because if you go back to India, you'll meet people who need you. And this country is growing at 6-7%. America is growing, where your growth story is there. More importantly, there are many more people like you in Harvard, but not as many in India of the same caliber. You can make an impact there. And what a well thought out advice that was. So I took 2 advices and I weighed one against the other and I said, oh, this one looks more sane from the larger ecosystem point of view. You just give India another 15 years and you'll see what you're saying will be real, because we are learning the art of branding. Today in the FT rankings, there are 12 Indian schools, top 100. 12 Indian schools. 6 IIMs. And so you can imagine that it is not as though we have not competed, we haven't packaged. If we start doing that. But the danger is that when you get out of this context, don't try and disown the place from where you came. See, some of you will go abroad and end up having, you will still be recognized as an Indian, not a foreigner. You will be a foreigner in a foreign land. But if you live up to your own ethos, you say, okay, this is a great country. I've come here in search of, you become a good citizen of that country, but at the same time, you cannot take away your Indianness, because everybody will remind you you're Indian, right? That's an important thing, the pride in our own culture, in our own thinking. I can still wear a good jacket and I can still have a pizza, it doesn't matter. We know this is a country that synthesizes almost everything. But what is core is very important for us to, again, discover and brand. And branding is very important. I have paid special emphasis to that. If you don't brand well, where was ISB before, So ISB branded itself so remarkably well. They didn't take on the IIMs because we are doing our 2-year programs. Took a 1-year program, and one of the architects is sitting here. So this is very, very critical. Indian School of Business has arrived. So it can, many institutions, IIMs have arrived, IITs have arrived, and so many schools can do that. There's no reason why we wouldn't. I hope I have answered your question. In fact, answers tend to be much longer than there, so ask a few more, but expect answers to be slightly longer. Are there any more? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
It was wonderful to capture your wisdom. At the outset, I wish to invoke the noble spirit of our founder, Sri N.J. Yashasvi, sir, who himself and our own Chancellor, Rangarajan, sir, they were also teaching at IIMs. Sir, I wish to, something amusing for you. The theme of your today's lecture is Globalizing Indian Thought. Sir, is there a necessity to actually Indianize our Indian thought?
That's what important question. That's the difficult part.
So, please, with your permission, and I take the liberty to draw your own name, Debashish Chatterjee. Chatterjee, if I am not mistaken, is the other way of putting a Chattopadhyaya. Is it correct or not, sir?
I can't change my father mid-course. I have to accept what my father told me I was.
Probably Chattopadhyaya means he has learned all the 4 Vedas.
Oh, interesting that you tell me. Yes, true.
Mukhopadhyaya Mukherjee,
Yeah.
Bandopadhyaya Banerjee.
Yeah.
So, looking at the what is written on the flexi behind
So what
it,
is your question?
my question is, sir, should we start with actually Indianizing our own Indian thought?
I said yes. Full stop.
And I just want to have your reaction on that, how to start with it.
There is no reaction, there is only action. Yes, Indianizing, that's what we are doing right now.
Thank you,
With you sitting in the audience. So what I'm saying is Indianizing Indian thought simply means that our education has largely been driven by methods, driven by contexts that are sometimes alien to us. And so you can see how we have recreated the English language. We can recreate world's wisdom and assimilate it with ours. So Indianizing Indian thought will not happen in the way I want it. It will happen in the way the collective Indian thinks about. Even today you ask, why would Indian want to go abroad? And for every right reason he wants to go abroad. Because his own talent is not valued, because he's not, and there's no reason why they should not. But the question is, why should they come back? Maybe this country should be an attractor in some ways. You can't say, they have to be patriotic, what are they are not. They're not seeing what you're saying, they're not seeing. They're not seeing the greatness of India. It's not visible to them. So you must make this visible. Only after you create wealth can you advise people, wealth creation has a limit. I mean, you have no wealth, how can you advise somebody? Right? So I have to build a world-class IIM to tell Indians in the IIM system that we can Indianize India and globalize India based on performance. That's why he said performance leads to influence, influence leads to reputation, reputation leads to power. But performance, your institutions have to perform on the global stage. Otherwise, how can you say I will globalize? Today, Tendulkar or a Kohli or A.R. Rahman, they are global names. They are not just Indian names. Why? Performance. If you don't perform as institutions at the global level, you will not. You do not have the courage. So you have to tell an Indian that you have arrived on the world stage and this is what you're doing by way of your performance. Now go out there and change the world. Only then can you say. Right? But thanks for asking the question. Very important question. Yes.
Sir, thank you so much, sir. One question from my side.
Oh, yes, sir.
Sir,
Yeah, please allow them to applaud. They want to
yes,
applaud.
please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sir, what is your thought on women leadership?
Women leadership.
Women leadership. So far, because women are born leaders.
Women are born leaders.
Women are born leaders.
Okay.
So, what is your thought on women leadership and how they are prominent in this corporate world?
Interesting question. I wish I had all the answers. It reminds me of a conversation I had with Lee Kuan Yew. This is a conversation with Lee Kuan Yew and Howard Gardner of Harvard Education School. Howard Gardner asked this question to Lee Kuan Yew, are leaders born or made? And Lee Kuan Yew's answer was one-liner. He said, they cannot be made unless they are born. Right? And so, birth is the primary condition. What are you born with? If Howard Gardner was completely, he didn't know what to say for an academic to get that kind of an answer. But the fact is that it is true that, and then Lee Kuan Yew gave an example. He said, look at sheep, how they rear sheep in Australia. Sheepdog is used, and you can make out a sheepdog from the eyes. It's an alpha dog or a beta dog. The eyes are bright and sharp. This is an alpha dog. So he gave the analogy of dogs, which is not relevant to women. I'm not going there. All I'm saying is it is possible that when you look at a woman, look at a learning history of the woman. There is enough research evidence that says when there's a war happening between two nations, first women oppose it, and then when it is decided that we have to go to war, women are the ones who support it the most, more than men. So it's a learning history that we are talking about. We're not talking about men and women as genders here. We're saying the learning history of woman has to be resourceful, is to be resilient. She gives birth to life, she nurtures life. It has to be loving, caring. So love as an organizing principle is what Indian women would do anyway. This is a learning history. So it's seamless. It's needless to say that they would not be leaders, because these are the qualities, these are the learning values, virtues that makes one a leader. And so if you say that what are we born with, how we grow up, what circumstances we grow up in. When I am Kozhikode in 1913, we got 54% women. I was criticized by the entire IM fraternity. All the directors said, you're tampering with a tried and tested CAT score. CAT score should be the basis. We reduced CAT score to 50%, but we said we'll look at 11 and 12 marks. 11th and 12th scores. And we realized that women and men had equal level playing fields until then. Which simply means after class 12, if you're from a middle class Indian family, which most of our students are, your coaching money will be divided between boys and money will be kept for the marriage of the daughter, not for coaching. Right? So you become non-competitive to start with after class 12. And so what happens after class 12? You have to look at 10th marks and 12th marks as factors in admission. That changed the entire thing for us. We had 54%, others did not. Today I can tell you, all IIMs swear by gender diversity, ISB swears by gender diversity. We were the first ones to flag it. Today the average intake of women would be 30% in a top Indian institution. That has happened because of us. What did we do? We allowed diversity to come in. We allowed another learning history to come in. As a result of more women in a classroom, boys were dressing better. They were not using foul language. And learning became more interesting, as we would see. Right? So it's a learning history that we were recruiting for, not for women, not for men, but for the sheer courage and the resilience and the doggedness with which you have to fight to arrive where the boys have arrived. Right? And thank you for asking this. I appreciate that. That's it. Can I leave? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Now I request our Chancellor, sir, Dr. C. Rangarajan, to give his presidential remarks.
Professor Chatterjee and friends, we have just listened to a delightful lecture in terms of content and delivery. There is a lot to think about and introspect. This is a Foundation Day lecture. On this day, we need to think about the ideals and objectives with which this institution was set up. It is our responsibility to see that this institution goes and abides by the values and objectives so that it becomes and continues to operate as a high-quality higher education institution. The subject of Professor Chatterjee's lecture today was globalizing Indian thought. But he went far beyond it. And he talked about the content of education. He talked about the Indian ideals. He talked about globalization of not only thought, but of other important elements in the system. And it is therefore very difficult for me to really summarize or go on to talk about something that he mentioned. But I think there are a few things on which one can think about. Globalizing Indian thought Are we talking about Indian thought of today? Or are we talking about Indian thought of 2000 years ago? Or what is contained in our scriptures? If you really think in terms of what is said about 2000 years ago, then we need to be careful. We are living in a world that is far different from what it was in the olden times. And when we talk about the ancient Indian thought, what is relevant and what is irrelevant? In what way the ancient thought is helpful in navigating our life now, steering our lives in certain directions? As I said, the world is very different. But one thing is common. Human emotions are same. Whether it is anger, pride, jealousy, there's an umpteen number of human qualities which have not changed from the ancient times to the modern times. And therefore, to some extent, the Puranas and the mythologies are helpful. But then, there is also the need to distinguish between what is relevant and what is not relevant. It is often said, those who do not know history are condemned to repeat it. But it was Santayana who said, philosopher Santayana who said, that those who know history are also condemned to repeat it. What does it mean then? It only means that unless we draw proper lessons from history, you may know history, but you will be condemned to repeat it. And that we can say about ancient wisdom also, or learning from the past. When you ask the question, it is relevant, but relevant for what? It is not as if that everything that was said 2000 years ago, everything was said in the scriptures or Puranas of various types, are relevant for everything. I still do not believe that the ancient thought provides any indication to what we do with the artificial intelligence. No. In terms of our attitude to life, in terms of what we need to do in order to gain peace and confidence in ourselves, in order to deal with situations in which we are in a way in which we do not know which way to go. Yes, ancient thought, ancient philosophy, and other things will help you, in a sense, to sort out how we deal with the issues. And therefore, the aspect of philosophy that is relevant in today's situation is in dealing with human attitudes towards the various situations in which we are placed. And that is for that, I think the ancient wisdom is good. In fact, we have a tendency to go back and talk of golden age. I think golden age is a myth. It is golden for some, not so golden for others. Therefore, to fall back upon and to rely on ancient wisdom in totality is not correct. And also, sometimes we hear about the fact that Ravana took Sita in Pushpak Viman, or Lord Ganesha has the head of the elephant, and therefore we know about that kind of a surgery. Or we talk about we know how to run planes at that time. I think these are kinds of things which we should avoid. I think we should be in a position to identify that which is relevant in the modern context, despite the passage of 2000 years, and talk about it. And then when we talk about this ancient knowledge, that ancient knowledge is not entirely belonging to India alone. That ancient knowledge is there in Greece, Rome, and so on. There is a lot to learn from Plato and Aristotle and Marcus Aurelius. And in Tamil Nadu, we talk about Tirukkural. And you find every finance minister who has hailed from Tamil Nadu quoting stanza from Tiruvallur, from Tirukkural, because despite the passage of time, what he said is still relevant, and it is a helpful guide to the conduct of a business today. So I would really say that what we really need is an understanding of our ancient wisdom, but also an understanding what is relevant and what is irrelevant. And there is also something which is inapplicable also, and which is not consistent with modern system or our modern values. He talked about also the education, the building up of educational institutions. But let me go back to one. I want to tell you an example that we often talk about Nishkama Karma as a great ideal which flows out of Bhagavad Gita. The translation for this is, action is thy duty, fruit is not thy concern. I talked to an ace tennis player, and he said that this doctrine of Nishkama Karma was highly applicable to him, because if he thought when he was playing about everything about what the result is going to be, then he will not be in a position to play smoothly. What he wanted to do was he was playing well. And that is the motivation. And this idea was a great idea to him. I was talking of the same thing to a very distinguished Prime Minister of our country. And he said, this is completely a non-research oriented philosophy. And it fits in well, as he said, with our governance system. Therefore, the same concept can be interpreted in many ways. And it's really important to see in what way you interpret it in the modern context. We also talk of leadership. Leadership also is different from institution to institution. We talk a great deal about educational institutions because we are associated with educational institutions. And I would say, yes, the educational institution, largely speaking, has a horizontal system. And therefore, the need for the leader or the head of the institution to be more communicative with the people and to be able to listen to them and respond to it is extremely important. Therefore, the leadership that is required in that context is very different from a leadership in a hierarchical system. I can tell you that when I went from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, to Bombay, to Mumbai, as you now call, to the Reserve Bank of India, in the initial stage, maybe in the first week or 10 days after taking it over, I saw a file came to me, through the various stages. And I did not agree with what the executive director had recommended. I came from the academic environment, and therefore what I did was to call the executive director and tell him why he is wrong, and I was trying to explain to him. He was listening to me. But then he didn't say anything, and he only said only one thing. He said, "Sir, it is your prerogative to overrule me." Now, that is the hierarchical system. Ultimately, the responsibility lies there. Therefore, leadership, we talk, leadership is important, and a nation needs leadership. A school needs a leadership, the college needs a leadership. So, when we talk of leadership also, we need to really distinguish between the characteristics of the institution, and the leadership requirement must be matched with that. And also very often people ask the question whether you're a born leader or you're a created, or a leader can be created. Can we set all the characteristics that a leader should have? Well, it is partly, and this is very often also posed as between nature and nurture, whether nurture can create a leader. So the point that I'm making is, it is the right people at the right time which makes the leaders. And when I mentioned about the horizontal system of the educational system and how we handle it, I remember the days when Ravi Mathai was director of the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. He was a good listener. He will act after talking to people. But then, there were no set rules at that time. But when Ravi took a decision, everybody accepted, not because it followed certain rules, but because people felt that as a person, Ravi Mathai was somebody who did not act from any selfish point of view. He did not have an axe to grind. And he made all decisions from the point of view of what the institution needs. And that is why, despite no rules, despite no clear direction in which a particular question will be answered, people accepted Ravi as a leader, Ravi Mathai as a leader, because of the confidence and the trust that they had in him. Well, this will work, I do not know, when an institution becomes large. If you don't have rules, regulations, and went only by what the instinct of one person, then that will not work. So leadership at one stage in the institution, in its evolution, is something different from what it needs when the institution grows up. I only want to make a few comments and then conclude. We talked about knowledge. We talked about how we can really improve the system to enable people to think for themselves. The one big difference that I note between the Indian educational system and the American educational system, for example, is that the the American system makes you to think for yourself. Whereas the Indian system most often only resulted in your being able to absorb what has been said or what has been written and maybe able to communicate that very well. And that is why I also found that most Indian students, when they went abroad, did very well in their courses. But when it came to if you are doing a PhD, if you came to the stage at which you appear for the comprehensive exam, and particularly the vivos of the competitive of the comprehensive exam, they didn't do that well, because our system has always been trying to make people, if I may say so, as scholars. Scholars are not really researchers. Scholars really are those who absorb what is already there or what is already written, put it in a comprehensive way, and communicate well. But on the other hand, a researcher is one who is able to think for himself and innovate and do that. I would only say that whether you talk of artificial intelligence or machine learning, we really need in a way to innovate. Innovation has to become part of the thinking and the way institutions, particularly education institutions, must operate to promote. Innovation is not that it comes out very easily. We may be good in repeating things, but we are not as good in trying to innovate. Therefore, in the broader system that we look at, we need to create the aptitude and the ability to innovate. And that is where we learn from others. And that learning is critically important. Globalization is, from an economic point of view, looks like it has reached its peak. Whatever that is happening now in the world today is reducing this globalization. At one time, we all thought that free trade, which is also fair trade, promotes efficiency for the world as a whole. Today, the language in which people are speaking, particularly in the developed countries and particularly in the United States, goes against it. But at least I do believe globalization of ideas will continue. We learn from others, they learn from us. And all that will happen only when we are able to relate knowledge and learning to what is relevant and what is important. The world is in a very difficult situation. The way in which we can move forward in an environment of brotherhood and understanding is what is needed. It is that kind of globalization that is needed. In that effort towards globalization, India can play a role, not only because of the material growth, but also because of what we can offer in terms of ideas. And that is the direction in which we must move. Now I will end here and thank you very much and thank Professor Chatterjee. I don't see him there, but I think, and thank him for a delightful lecture, which I am sure that all of you enjoyed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I request Madam Srimati Shobha Raneshashri to come onto the dais and felicitate our chief guest of today. Madam, 1 second, ma'am. I request ma'am again to present to our Chancellor, Dr. C. Rangarajan, sir. I think through online we are felicitating, sir. Sir, please join, sir.
Hello.
Sir, please accept it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So I'll take just 2-3 minutes only. No, you can sit here. Last one. Please, ma'am. Please, ma'am. Okay. So I feel honored to present the vote of thanks on this occasion of 15th Foundation Day lecture. I am fortunate to join all the 15th Foundation Day lectures. I feel honored. On behalf of ICFAI Foundation for Higher Education, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to our Chancellor, Sir, Dr. C. Rangarajan, for his presidential remarks and continuous support. Thank you, sir. We are deeply indebted to Professor Debashish Chatterjee, Head IIM Kozhikode, for sparing his valuable time and for delivering an inspiring lecture on globalizing Indian thought, insights from Leadership Chronicles. Thank you so much, sir. We are grateful to Madam Srimati N. Shobha Raneshashri, Chairperson ICFAI Group, for her gracious presence today and always her constant support to all of us. Thank you, ma'am. We are thankful to Sri V.R. Shankara Garu, President ICFAI Group, for his continuous encouragement and all the support all the time. Thank you, sir. Probably he must be watching online. Thank you. We are special thanks to Professor B.J. Rao, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, Professor M.R. Rao Garu, former Dean, ISB, Professor J. Mahendra Reddy Garu, Distinguished Advisor ICFAI Group, Sri T.P. Das, Advisor ICFAI Group, and ex-Director General of Police, Andhra Pradesh, Sri Vishwanath Alluri Garu, Founder IMI Mobile and Secretary, Jiddu Krishnamurthy Foundation, Professor Haragopal Reddy Garu, Advisor ICFAI Group and former Vice Chancellor, Acharya Nagarjuna University, and Professor Suresh Chand Sharma, Director IBS Gurgaon. I take this opportunity to thank all the directors, deans, heads of departments, esteemed colleagues, and support staff for making this event a grand success. I wish to convey a special note of thanks to our IFHE administrative team for their untiring support in organizing this event. Thank you, all of you. Our special thanks to Director Admin Colonel SP Vishwanath Garu for leading this event. I think he deserves a round of applause. Thank you, sir. Don't stop, keep slapping. Our special note of thanks to Mr. Sudhakar Rao Garu, Director Branding, and his entire team for all your support in conducting this event. Now you can stop. You can stop clapping. Our special thanks to all the reporters from the electronic and print media for your support in covering this event. Thank you all. We want to thank all our students. Now you can clap. who attended this program today, and your patient listening and making this event a grand success. All the blessings to all of you. And we want to thank, okay, now you can stop. You can stop, please. Now we want to thank all those who viewed this event online. Thanks to them also. And our special thanks to Dr. Padmavati, who supported so much for this event. Now I request everybody, please, I request all of you, please, to rise for national anthem. Please rise for national anthem. Yeah, 1 second. Just 1 minute. After this national anthem, please stand for 2-3 minutes after national anthem, so that we will take a collective picture of with all of you. Please stay for 1 more minute after national anthem. Please.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Please stand there only 1 minute. Last event.
Actually, they can't take me.
Again, thank you one and all. You can leave. Thank you.